Hey guys, my name is Loveless, and we are back with Mollitudo. Mollitude. We are back with this one that I can't pronounce to save my life. I said it before, cannot seem to think of it again. So, it's not Quirk Knife, that's what I could say. So this is the one that's really angsty, and I got a glimpse of what I'm supposed to read, and I'm like, oh my god, my poor baby. Ah. But with me just being over dramatic, not really, maybe. So yeah, let's get onto it. Azuku bit his lips, holding back his groan as his eyes fluttered open. His torso felt like it was burning, and his limbs felt numb, due to the position they were forced to stay in. Did I lose consciousness? Azuku thought, realizing that the table has been angled back flat. He shuddered as he remembered what happened. This is so fucked up, Izuku thought. As his wounds continued to sting, his arms felt especially numb, and he was worried about the strain they were in. He looked up as the door opened. Vex met his eyes as he walked in, glee filling his face. You're awake! You passed up for a while there. What day is it? Izuku asked. Monday! It's already late afternoon. You missed breakfast. Vex had the gall to pout as he shifted the table. Guess that's what I get for letting you sleep in. He raised the packet to Izuku's mouth, and Izuku silently finished them. Can you release my arms? Izuku said after he was done. I can't feel them. Vex looked at his arms. Oh dear, it does seem a bit swollen. He reached out, ran a finger down Izuku's bound arms, expecting them. Izuku bit his lips, trying to not wince when his arm flared up in pain. Is it painful? Vex upon noticing Izuku biting his lip. Izuku could literally see Vex trembling in excitement. He squeezed harder. Izuku didn't know how his arms could feel numb and pain at the same time. But if there was a better way to describe what he felt when he grabbed it, it was that. He felt his skin crawl as Vex continued squeezing. He could hear the disgusting voice get excited and breathing getting heavier as he squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. Izuku didn't know when he closed his eyes, but he opened them when he felt a shadow over his head. His heart starting to beat faster when he found Vex hovering on top of him, a blank look in his crazed eyes as he continued to play with his arms. Why do you have such a big scar here, Izuku? I'm so curious. What if I cut into it? Will it hurt? Vex sat on him, his left hand hovering over the big scar he got from fighting Muscular. Izuku had not broke from any pain he suffered before this, but this unwanted contact, he wanted him off. Get off me, he breathed out, trying to not sound like a whimper. Maybe if you ask nicely, I haven't heard your beautiful voice call my name yet. Vex rubbing circles on his arms. Izuku took a deep breath. He really didn't want to, but his arms were still weak, and the numerous of damage he did onto them. And he didn't want to lose the use of his arms. Plus, he wanted Vex to fucking get off of him and stop touching him. Please. Vex, get off of me. And please let my arms go. I need them, he said, trying to not sound too desperate. His captor giggled. Good boy. You're such a good boy when you get uncomfortable, Izuku. He climbed off him, pushing the table upright again. You know, your reactions are so enjoyable when I'm playing with you yesterday. Even as you tried your best to be quiet, I could still tell you were so uncomfortable. He sighed happily, eyes distant. He shook his head, bending down and unclasping the right arm. Pain. Izuku winced as his right arm was lowered, letting his arm dangle towards the floor. Hell. he thought as Penz's needle slowly filled his arms. Vex looked at Izuku before saying, "Hey, do you want me to move you to the floor?" He said, looking almost normal and complete opposite from the wild look in his eyes when he was on top of Izuku. Izuku looked at Vex warily. Could he actually say yes? Could he try to break out in the meantime? Wouldn't want you to die before I try anything more on you. Vex turned around, fiddling with the metal tray. Izuku replied, "Yes." "Yes, what?" "Yes, please, Vex." Vex turned back, smiling as he said, "Fantastic! I was hoping you'll say yes." Izuku's breath hitched as he looked at what he was holding, a hammer. "What are you doing?" Izuku asked, squirming as Vex looked intensely at his leg, before placing the hammer down gently on his knee. Vex tapped the hammer against his knee. "Once, twice. I can't have you escaping, you know," he murmured. "Even though your quirk is disabled, you're still a UA student after all." He palmed Izuku's kneecap as he leaned over to take a better look, so close that Izuku felt his breath puffing against his skin. Izuku leaned forward as much as he could, feeling his arm land on Vex's shoulder and weakly pushing. Vex ignored him. "You're broken bones here, haven't you?" Vex said airily. "So it shouldn't be too painful." He leaned back, hammer slowly rising. "Vex, wait, please, ah!" Izuku couldn't help but cry out as the hammer landed on his left knee. His knee shook with a small tremor as it sent jolts of pain to his brain. His knee felt shattered, tears leaking from his eyes as he squeezed his eyes shut. He swallowed his whimpers and shaking. Vex laughed as he reached up to unclasp the other arm, following by the body clasp, catching Izuku as he slumped forward. Still disorientated from the pain, Vex shrugged his shoulder and nudged Izuku's arm over his shoulders. With Izuku's arms wrapped around his neck, he leaned down to unclasp his ankles. It was the first time in what felt like so long he could move. "It's now or never," he thought to himself, tears slipping out as he steeled himself for pain. Once he felt his ankle freed, he moved. Legs rose to wrap around Vex's torso, reaching as high as you can, Midoriya. "Izuku, make him fall." Adrenaline pumping through his body as he forced his legs to move. While his hands grabbed Vex's shoulder tightly, he squeezed, like his life depended on it, as he tried to make Vex fall from the momentum. Vaguely he could tell that he was panicking, his brain blinking out as he thought his mind to escape. "Run, run, run!" Vex cried out in surprise as he fell. He fell backwards, Izuku quickly using the gravity to punch Vex as hard as he could, throwing him off. He landed on the floor, cried as his bad knee was jolted. A resound slapping sound heard in the room as his hand landed hard on the floor as he stumbled forward. He could feel that he could hardly breathe, on the verge of hyperventilating. Run was the only desperate thought repeating constantly in Izuku's mind as he stood up, staggering a bit on his knee. He ignored how every part of his body was screaming at him to stop, halfway running and stumbling as he bolted for the door. His heart had never beat this fast. It was thundering in his chest, threatening to jump out of his chest from intensity of the beats. It jumped as his hand grazed the doorknob, finding it open with a twist. He took a glimpse to what the room contained, a long hallway leading out to a living room. "Fuck! Almost there." Izuku stumbled forward, taking a step, only vision graying out for a second. He felt warm blood gush out of his head as he hit the floor, gasping, turning his body sluggishly to the side to stare at the man. His surroundings swirled, colors mingling. "Didn't know that you could act through pain like that." Vex said, painting behind him, a hammer in his hand. He used the butt of the hammer to slam into Izuku's head. No, Izuku thought, as he tried to get up. He couldn't. The adrenaline had faded, leaving behind his tired body and throbbing head. Vex felt down to the side, placing the butt of the hammer in front of Izuku's face, hands closing around the metal head. I should be very, very angry, Izuku, he said, knocking the hammer repeatedly on the floor as he spoke. But I'm really happy at how you acted. You truly are determined, aren't you? A fractured kneecap doesn't stop you. He laughed loudly. Izuku's hand lunged out in a last attempt as Vex only dodged. Izuku must have been moving really slowly, his sluggish body refusing to respond normally. He hurt. Vex just slammed his head again, causing him to black out. Wake up, fucking nerd! Izuku jolted as his eyes remained closed. Why am I hearing Kachan in my head? Am I going crazy? No, you stupid idiot. You're just scared. Izuku knew. He knew he was terrified. He tried to run, but he could not. He failed. He still could feel Vex on him. He was very tired. Is One for All going to die here with me? No, because you aren't going to die, shitty nerd. Believe that we'll find you. I am your image of victory after all, stupid Deku. Izuku smiled. You're smiling. Izuku's eyes slid open again. He was laying on the floor this time, but propped up against the wall, taut chains connecting his hands to the wall. His ankles were completely chained to the floor. His knee throbbed. His head hurt like a bitch. The room swam around him for a while. Izuku met Vex's eyes. He didn't look pissed, oddly enough. Was it a nice dream? Vex asked, kneeling nearer to Izuku, tilting his head in question. Izuku looked silently back in reply. Well, whatever, Vex hummed, moving closer. Izuku struggled to lean away, arms moving to race his face, only to realize the chains prevented it. He also realized that the ripped shirt was completely missing. He felt vulnerable. He didn't want a single inch of his skin exposed to Vex at all. His knee was really burned. His body instincts nudged him to move his leg to release the pain, but he couldn't. But he completely could not move. They were firmly attached to the ground. He felt his knee throb in timely rhythm. He tried not to hyperventilate again, feeling his knee pain build up the longer he kept his legs straightened out. He felt the body slightly to the right as he could bend his knees slightly. It helped, but not much. Izuku wanted to shout in frustration. Vex looked at Izuku's chest. You tried to escape from me, but I'm not a monster, you know. He uncapped something, fingers dripping, and a scoop of yellow tonic lotion. He moved his fingers towards Izuku, and he flinched, pressing his chest backwards. Vex ignored the flinch and fingers inching closer as he rubbed the lotion into his cuts. To prevent infection, he said happily, rubbing a generous amount onto the cuts. He took a long time properly slathering the wounds with the lotion. Izuku's skin crawled. He hated how Vex's face screamed excitement and pleasure as he stared at Izuku's cuts with intensity. Oh wow, you have freckles on your shoulders too? Vex said happily as he finished cleaning his wounds, fingers poking at the splatter of freckles over his shoulder, before spreading his hand out to squeeze his shoulder. I wonder if you have freckles on your back too. Izuku tried to ignore the bug under his skin. He threw his body forward as much as he could, but Vex only ignored him, leaning forward to over Izuku's head to see his back. Haha, you do have them! Vex exclaimed excitedly. He sat onto his ankle, grabbing his chin, tilting his head forward. Izuku struggled a bit, but he was too tired to resist. Vex looked at the cuts. think I slammed your head a bit too many times, he mused as he rubbed lotion into his cuts. Izuku breathed out slowly as he finally stopped touching him. Anyway, you slept all the way through dinner, you know, Vex whined, as if he was not the cause of that. He held the packets out again. Izuku was getting really sick of liquid food. His stomach seemed to cramp in excitement. If you need to use the toilet, Vex suddenly said, I left a container for you. Just tell me and I'll unchain you. Actually, do you want to use it now? He felt disgusted, humiliated, angry with himself that he needed to use the toilet. Izuku considered not using the toilet, but he really didn't want to Vex to remove his pants if he ended up relieving in them. He nodded silently. What was that? Do you want to use the toilet? Say please, Vex, nicely, and maybe I will. Please, Vex. Izuku bit out. Vex hummed and unchained his ankle and right arm clasp. Want me to help you up? Vex wiggled his fingers. Izuku ignored him, placing his entire weight on his right hand as he folded his right leg under him, using the momentum to stand up. When he distributed his weight on his left knee, he almost folded, but his hand caught himself on the wall. Izuku felt bile raise up in his throat when he stood. His vision swirled in black spots. He felt himself sway. Oh God, don't faint. Don't faint, he thought to himself, panicked. Looks like you can't stand on your own, can you? No. Izuku swallowed hard as he bit out a word. He looked at Vex, feeling even more lightheaded as he did so, and found himself staring immensely. I don't need your help. He stumbled towards the container slowly, more leaning than actual walking. He debated escaping again, but he didn't know if he could break the metal chain alone. Even if he was chained with one hand, not that I can even run now, Izuku thought almost bitterly, as he watched his surroundings blur. The dull color of the container taunted Izuku as he stood in front of it. Oh God, Vex won't look away, won't he? Izuku glanced at Vex, and he saw him smiling encouragingly, face flushed with humiliation. He relieved himself under the watchful eyes of Vex. He was exhausted. It was like his determination had buzzed out with the failed escape attempt. Vex, how do you know where I live? Izuku watched tiredly after he relieved himself, slumping onto the ground, watching himself be chained back. His head was still swimming. He didn't really think he could handle an impact on how it's throbbing. I told you, I've been watching you since the school festival. Vex hummed, patting his cheek after he was done. Naturally, all I had to do was follow you. Izuku just felt disgusting. He was followed, and he didn't realize? Vex patted his cheek. I'll play with you later, okay? I'll let you rest first, was all he purred before walking out. Izuku looked at the door longingly. Should I try to activate my quirk again? Ignoring the voice in his head telling him to stop causing pain to himself, Izuku felt his body flare up with the telltale signs of his quirk, only to bowl forward when pain coursed through his body. He could barely get it activated, let alone trying to break the chains with them. Of course, life won't be that easy, he thought to himself, laughing breathlessly. As sweat dripped down the sides of his face, his vision grayed out again, but his body didn't allow him to faint. Now that he was alone, without being able to fall back into the sweet arms of darkness, Izuku was left to his own thoughts. He knew his body was shaking from exhaustion, the lack of food and water leaving his physical state weak. He couldn't help but shiver. He could feel the stale, cool air on his chest. He wanted to puke. It reminded him of Vex's touching his body. He felt disgusting. I'm so tired. Katsuki looked at his phone again. It's almost been a whole day, but there's been no update. He didn't want to believe the nerd was dead. So he messaged an open-ended question so that he knew he would get the bastard to reply. Why Deku of all people? You, 1705. Like I said, His pain looks absolutely delicious. Shitty nerd, 1730. So what, you just kept stalking the nerd? For what, your own experiments? You, 1730. Your Deku is so determined, Kachan. He tried escaping today. How naughty. He's quieter now. Shitty nerd, 1731. Heart pounding, Katsuki typed. You better not have fucking killed him, or I'll find you and kill you. You, 1732. Don't worry, Kachan. Want to see? Shitty nerd has sent an attachment. Shitty nerd, 1735. Katsuki felt like cursing when he saw the picture. Deku was no longer on the table, but on the floor. He seemed to be unconscious. Blood caked on his neck and his bare chest. His shorts were ended near his knee, revealed a red and swollen knee. He wished he knew where Deku was. He felt so helpless, not being able to help when Deku was being tortured somewhere. He was barely able to concentrate in class. He had always convinced himself he didn't care about Deku, but he knew that was a lie. It had only been a day since Deku has been announced missing, 2 since he's been in the bastard's grasp, and Katsuki already felt so fucked up over his disappearance. Fuck, Deku, why do you always have to be the one getting screwed over? He cursed angrily. He shook his head to focus. If only he had more clues. Why do you want to hurt him? You, 1737. Kachan, shitty nerd, 1738. Katsuki threw his phone onto the table. Fucker. Pain, sports festival, premeditated kidnapping. What was the link? He grabbed his phone again, standing up as he thought. He walked towards the common room. Kirishima looked at the entrance and walked towards him. Bakugo, come here for a second, Kirishima said, pulling him over. What? He snapped. Todoroki sat beside Koda, and the former said, we thought of something. What if we made Koda ask the animals around for information? Ida explained. Katsuki considered it. I know to ask the rats looking around in houses. If he didn't drive in a car, they wouldn't be that far away from Deku's neighborhood. He sighed in frustration. I mean, that's assuming he didn't have a car. I don't fucking know. They could be anywhere. He took out his phone, feeling angry tears coat his eyes. Katsuki didn't want to see the pictures, feeling that he would puke every time he saw the state Deku was in. But he wanted to see the surroundings, revealing anything. He placed the phone on a table, breathing deeply to calm himself down. Todoroki peered over, his face pinched as he looked at the picture again. But he didn't flinch away. Katsuki could see his eyes unfocusing, as he was trying to not focus on anything but Deku. He looked at it for a while, frowning slightly before turning to Koda, saying, tell them to look for a room with no windows. Actually, get the insects to do it too. Katsuki looked at Todoroki, who elaborated, the walls are gray and concrete. The lighting seems also artificial. It's either a basement or a storage room. Despite himself, Katsuki was impressed. His phone buzzed and everyone jumped and glanced at the screen. Katsuki picked it up, but the screen was a message from Aizawa. Bakugo, do you know if Midoriya had ever told you he was followed? Aizawa, 1750. No. What did you find? You, 1750. His phone rang. Katsuki picked it up. So, what is it? We found something. We checked the cameras on Midoriya's house, and we saw a similar figure appear multiple times, mostly during the weekends, Aizawa said. Wait, did you get a name then? Katsuki said. No, I was hoping you'd had an idea, Aizawa replied. Katsuki thought for a bit. He did have an idea, but not the individual. Ever since the messages, there's been a theory he had been floating around. Actually, I have a theory. Explain. I've received more text today and an attachment. I'll forward that to you later. The bastard kept talking about pain, From the looks of the camera recording, Deku tried to use his quirk and suddenly convulsed in pain. Katsuki said slowly, his thoughts becoming more cohesive as he spoke aloud. If that's the case, judging from the link of the sports festival, he might have taken Deku to see how much pain he can inflict. He might be addicted to seeing pain. And if I'm right, his quirk must be something sort of a quirk successor, which causes pain too, involving around fucking pain. Aizawa hummed. That's really intuitive, Bakugo. Thank you. You've helped me a lot. Remember, don't do anything careless, he replied. Katsuki breathed out deeply as he hung up. Bro, that was actually impressive, Katsuki said in awe. You should really try your hand at playing detective on missions when we graduate. Katsuki huffed, chest unconsciously puffed up at the praise, despite the situation. Shut the fuck up, shitty hair. Ida asked, what do you mean my sports festival link, Bakugo? Think about it. Katsuki leaned forward, jutting out his hand aggressively, poking the table with his index finger. Shitty Nerd was breaking his bones left and right in order to fight half and half, and didn't look like he was in pain. Judging by how the creep kept talking about like he liked seeing him in pain. He leaned back, turning his voice slightly disturbed as he finished. Maybe the bastard wanted to see if Deku could handle the pain or some fucked up shit like that. Todoroki looked guilty as he looked at his hands. It was because he was trying to help me. None of that guilt shit, half and half. Katsuki snapped. You know Deku would never blame you, fucking weak ass. Uraraka looked at Katsuki, disturbed at first. She seemed to take a deep breath for herself as she moved to the matter at hand. A number of emotions flittering across her face as Katsuki noticed pain, sadness, then determination as she stilled herself. She then smiled softly and said, you know, making up with Deku could change you for the better, Bakugo. Kirishima nodded at the side, eyes wet. It's true, you become so much softer. It's actually kind of sweet. Huh? Katsuki yelled, his palms lighting up with explosions as everyone leaned back, hands raised with a wince over their face. I'm not soft. Uraraka just smiled knowingly. She said quietly, I think Deku will be very happy to know how hard you're helping when he returns. When? Katsuki stilled, explosions fading. He hated people talking about their feelings, but he knew what Uraraka was trying to do. Yeah. He grunted, arms crossed. Shitty Nerd better appreciate the shit I'm doing for him after I beat his ass for getting kidnapped in the first place. Oh, that sounds like Bakugo. Gonna be like, I'm worried for you. I'm gonna beat your fucking ass for making me worry. And then it's like, hey, that's just how he is. Such a tsundere. Gotta love it. Okay, well, that's it for this chapter. It's been a long chapter for me. But probably not when I'm done editing it. But that's how that goes. But if you want to see more, you know what to do.